WNST and I have been friends for 20 years. We came at it very, very honestly. He was one of my junior producers, sort of a cub producer, running around Long Island in New York back in the day when I was syndicated as Nasty nationwide on First 101 Sports and then Sporting News Radio. He was in the window with me at Mickey Mantle's on Central Park South when we had Gary Bettman sit in with us, as well as Slash from Guns N' Roses and Denny Nagel, and all sorts of bizarre things have happened since then in my life, certainly in his life. We remain great friends. We remain hockey friends. We remain radio friends. He is a podcast producer extraordinary. He works with Dan Patrick and Richard Deitch and a whole bunch of my media bunkies, booking guests. But hockey is the nearest and dearest thing to your life. Lou Pelligrino, you can follow him out on Twitter at Lou_Pelligrino. He gets into it with all sorts of people in the sports space and is an executive producer of all things sports, but more hockey and the love of hockey and your love of the Islanders. First off, Lou, welcome in, and you know I'm calling you to pimp the puck. You know I'm calling you to show off my Stanley Cup champion shirt and my hat. How about that? I hoisted the cup, Lou.
You know, it's so funny, Nestor, because on the walk to the studio that I'm in now, I was thinking about all of the things that we've been through over the years, and you've touched on a couple of them. And the thing I remember the most was your love of Barry Trotz. And I know you have a soft spot in your heart for the Nashville Predators while he was the head coach of the Predleys. And then it all comes full circle, because now in my mind I'm thinking, there's Nestor in the radio booth with Kenny Albert doing skipjack stats for him. Then you have Barry Trotz playing one of the epic pranks on Kenny Albert, having him arrested, I believe, at an airport somewhere. If you don't know that story, you should have
No. Kenny told me that one 2 weeks ago. And by the way, I didn't do stats for Kenny. I was the beat writer for the team. I did color when Gene Ubriaco was unavailable.
Oh, see,
that's how my whole radio career began that way.
That's it.
So I was the beat writer at the Evening Sun. I was the pop music critic and the beat writer for hockey.
Right.
That's stats for the Skipjacks. That was Bill Yeagy and Walter Kordecki and a bunch of other buddies who ate those death dogs up in the what is now the Royal Farms Arena press box. Yes, it's okay. I just want to get the story straight.
But right, of course. No, listen, that's the most important thing in the business that we're in, is getting the story straight. But then here's Barry Trotz, who's going into the Stanley Cup final for the Washington Capitals. It all comes full circle, and then not only do they win the Stanley Cup, they shut down and dominate, arguably from start to finish, the best team in hockey. Stat-wise, points-wise, I mean, it was just unbelievable the way this team came together. And, you know, a lot of my Islander fan friends, and I've kind of boycotted the Islanders, so we won't even get into them with the whole, Garth Snow, Doug Waite stuff. I'm glad Lou Lamoriello is running the ship now.
By the way, do you know how many people the Islanders championship affected back in the 80s? I mean,
I know.
Like everybody, Beninati and all the Rob Carlin, these guys were all Islander. They grew up with Islander blood like you. I mean,
sure.
When I met you, the Gordon's Fisherman was on your jersey all of a sudden. The team completely, all those years I would visit you in New York, the last thing in the world I ever would have considered was, hey, Nesh, you want to come out to Long Island and go see the Islanders play? I'd have been like, dude, I'm in Manhattan and had a Swedish girlfriend. What would I want to be in Long Island watching the Islanders play,
I remember that Swedish girlfriend, too, and she was very nice.
Very nice lady.
Very, very nice.
She lives in Västerås now. It's Sweden,
But
she's got 3 kids. It's a long story.
A lot of my Islander fan friends who still have that orange and blue blood, they're all thinking, we can't root for the Capitals to win the Stanley Cup because of Dale Hunter, Pierre Turgeon. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I want the Capitals to win the Stanley Cup because I like the vibe of that team. I like their makeup. I love Braden Holtby. I think he's played so many great games for them, but has just come out on the wrong side, whether it's playoff overtime losses, playoff losses to the Penguins. I was watching a little of the parade yesterday that I know you were at, and I believe it was Rob Carlin who actually said, think of a goal that was scored, I want to say in the playoffs against the Penguins. I don't know if Walker set it up, and it was a young defenseman who may have scored it, and he said the puck went on its side and somehow managed to trickle through Matt Murray, and he said, think of how many times in big spots, that puck has turned sideways and managed to find its way through Braden Holtby in big spots.
Oh, Rangers Game 6, like to start with that. I mean,
to
me, that was the most disgusting one because they could have won the cup. I mean, that would have been a very – if they would have gotten through that, you can conjure that up in any of the last couple of years, that if they just would have gotten past the Penguins. But that was – that was when they really did have it won. The Penguins, last year they were turd in Game 7. It's all different thing when you're in double overtime in Game 7 because you had the lead in Game 6 and lost it with 40 seconds left. I mean, the amount of heartbreak just encapsulated in the last 5 years for the millennial set. But I go back to LaFontaine, dude, right? I mean, that's how far back I go with 87. So the amount of frustration, and I love the bus that was in the parade where the sign on the top said season ticket holder since 74, because I know there was a lot of pain on that bus. That's the bus I had the most respect for. And Dick Patrick walking out of I left the parade on Tuesday walking with solo, just me and Dick Patrick walking through the mall, and there's the guy that, has always been the Patrick family, Patrick division, all of that has never won, that has always been the patriarch, before Poyle got there, after Poyle was gone, and to see him walk back to his office after a parade, I was in the right place at the right time literally every moment of all of this. When Ovechkin came over to Trotz's table and grabbed the cup, I'm sitting there. It was insane, but I still have to pinch myself and say, did it ever happen, right? I mean, and that all the confluence of events that has to take place, including Ovechkin going from being literally like Ric Flair, right? Like a heel to becoming a hero, right? Like no one hates Ovechkin all of a sudden. Everybody hated Ovechkin for 10 years, right?
Well, because you know what? Winning cures all. Whether there's problems in the locker room, whether there's problems, in the front office, or a player having a problem with the front office member, you know what? All of that stuff sometimes gets pushed to the side. It may rear its ugly head again once July 1st hits and free agency starts, and then the draft, with the draft and all that stuff. But winning cures all. And, you look at this Capitals team, I love the fact that Ovechkin is milking this, and I don't even mean milking it in a bad way. He won a Stanley Cup, and I'm tired of seeing people on social media, act like you've been there. He hasn't been there. He hasn't been there. And you know what? This is the problem with hockey. As much as we love the sport, hockey is one of those sports that it is too buttoned up. Hockey is not tennis. All right, you ever watch tennis? Some of these players, other than John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors, and you see the emotion from a Serena Williams or Venus Williams, there's no emotion in tennis at times. You see things, everybody's stone-faced. Novak Djokovic always looks stone-faced. Roger Federer sometimes doesn't look like he's enjoying himself.
Nobody will be having any fun in golf this weekend. Everybody sits there and you got to shut up, and everybody's miserable, and you hit the ball, and you clap politely, and that's not hockey. And dude, after 8 weeks of this roller coaster ride in a town where nobody has given a puck about hockey all of my life, we got a 12 share on TV here. They shut the trains down leaving Baltimore to get down to D.C. to see the Cup on Tuesday. My train was 3.5 hours to get down there because they couldn't figure out how to get people from Baltimore into a parade of 500,000 people. Everybody's rocking their red now in Baltimore, and I couldn't give hockey away here for 25 years. So winning is an antidote, but more than that, it's exciting. And the part where you get roped into the soap opera and you think TJ Oshie's cute, or you love Ovechkin's grit, or you think Tom Wilson's a bruiser, or you love the young Jews and the young players, or you love the Carlson slap. Whatever you fall in love with the fact that hockey's the best sport. And I've been saying that from the minute I ever had a microphone. I watch them all. I go to them all. I talk about them all. I've even talked auto racing with you, and I've had cars run around my building in IRL, and I've seen bullfights in Madrid. I feel like I've done everything this short of the Iditarod, right? Hockey's the best sport, so it's not hard to get emotionally invested in something that is inherently exciting. Much more exciting than baseball or golf or tennis, quite frankly, right?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the sport where I could remember in the early 90s where people would say to me, why do you love hockey so much? And I would just say, because I just do. Oh, I can't follow it on TV. Well, then there's something wrong with you, because if you can't follow the puck the way the camera angles are now and with all the camera, then there's something severely wrong with you. Not really severely wrong with you, but
that's been an improvement. It's a better game on television.
Absolutely.
I mean, hell, my wife and my son, they couldn't get tickets for Game 3 and 4. They went down and they sat at the party and just watched it on a screen, the size of the building, and love their experience. My wife loves seeing Sting and Shaggy. My son saw Fall Out Boy. I was out with the Dragons, the Miracle, Imagine Dragons, whatever the hell they're called. I don't know what the kids are listening. Yeah, they were out in Vegas. So they've hipped this thing up. They've made it something, and certainly the whole Vegas story made other people, even if you still hate Ovechkin, you're neutral, right? You're a huge hockey fan. You're going to watch the Cup Finals. If it was Tampa and Winnipeg, you would have watched and had a reason to watch.
That was the point I was going to say to you before. Back in the 90s when I was really, everybody was not into hockey, but I was. I used to tell people I could watch. Now, these teams were not good at the time. I said I could watch a San Jose Sharks-Ottawa Senators game and still be excited about it. And still be, wow, this is a great play by Pat Falloon, or, wow, look at Sylvain Turgeon play for the Senators. He made a really sick move to score a goal on Artur Zerbe. These were not household names in the 90s, and I still watch them on ESPN2, The Deuce, with, Steve Levy and Barry Melrose hosting NHL Tonight, and Gary Thorne and Bill Clement doing play-by-play. These were things that I got excited for, because you got to see teams that you weren't always able to see, because there was no social media. There was no Facebook. There was no streaming live games. There was no NHL package. So now everybody who has these things thinks, oh, I can watch hockey whenever you want. It was a chore to find hockey games when we were watching them in the mid-'90s.
I wrote about that at length. You talk about the mid-'90s. How about the 70s and the 80s when the Clippers and the Skipjacks are running around here and I was on the beat? ESPN gave up on it. There was a time when the Penguins were playing in the finals where we didn't have the channel. It was that Sportsnet, when they went... the league under Ziegler did all sorts of... The league's tried to kill itself many, many times in this country and across Canada, quite frankly, pulling teams out of Quebec and Winnipeg and whatnot. But, it's the good old hockey game. It's the best game you can name. Lou Pelligrino, Sweet Lou, my former producer at the turn of the century at Sporting News Radio out of New York. He's even lost his Long Island accent. Your whole voice has changed. I love it. Lou_Pellegrino. He also works with Dan Patrick, does all sorts of podcast production, as well as with Richard Dice. But one of my dear hockey friends, one of the dudes that always wanted to see what it would look like if me and Barry Trotz ever won a cup. And, you do go back to the days when Trotz would be playing a game at the Garden or, over in New Jersey or whatever, that I would chase the Predators around with my jersey. I think I saw the Predators play in 15 or 20 rinks over the course of time. To see him become this sort of treasured, venerable, top 5, now getting his name on the trophy, I tell everybody, Lou, I'm way too close to it with Trotz. I don't even, I'm standing next to him at the parade. I'm standing next to him with the cup an hour after they win the cup. I'm too close to judge it. But the hockey world has come around on Barry Trotz, right?
Oh, absolutely. And considering, and I don't know, as of this moment that we're talking, I don't know if there has been any talk about a contract extension or anything. I know he went into this season as a lame duck coach, and I do know there are some needs around the league where a head coach is needed, and he's going to either have a lot of money thrown at him by the Capitals, or will he be able to be wooed by another team and say, brought the cup to the Washington area, very happy about that. The Capitals came in at the last minute with an offer, and the offer wasn't to my liking. I know that there's an opportunity, ironically enough, on Long Island for a head coach. And maybe I look at that as the next challenge, but only if John Tavares decides that he's going to stay. Listen, Barry Trotz is still in demand. I thought after the Predators finally let him go, I thought, wow, this guy's been here from day one. What's going to happen next? I wanted the Islanders to sign him as a head coach when he was available a couple of years ago, And now, listen, he's in Washington. And it's ironic that Peter Laviolette replaced him in Nashville. It's a very ironic situation where you look at Laviolette, he's had success wherever he's gone. He wins a Stanley Cup in Carolina. He takes the Flyers to the Stanley Cup Finals. They fall short against the Blackhawks. Then he takes the Predators to the Stanley Cup Finals. They fall short against the Penguins. But you could just see that type of success that follows each guy around. Wherever they go, they know they're getting a no-nonsense coach who has a good plan in place, and the guy gets results, and players will run through a brick wall for both of them. So, I mean, Barry Trotz, yes, is still very much in high demand, and I think the Stanley Cup only, makes it even bigger.
Lou Pelligrino has been my friend for 2 decades. He is, I'm trying to bring you in from the outside as some sort of voice of reason, right? I mean, we're all in the middle of this red storm, and you're just an Islander fan that watches the Blackhawks win one year, the Kings, or the Penguins. I mean, it's all sort of the same to you. Did this feel any different to you in Ovechkin winning? Did it feel bigger and more monumental, shall we say? Look, I was under the bowels of the arena. I was out there in Vegas, and I know you follow me and saw all the pictures and all the fun and all the zaniness that ensued with all the cup celebrations and all of that. To have Steve Levy and Barry Melrose under the building, and Steve Levy to be, who I know you know as well, be a little emotional about it, and people seeing Trotz and Tony Robbins standing on the bench and Ovechkin handed him the cup, and 5,000 Caps fans making their way out into the desert on 72 hours of notice to see this thing happen. I think the first Blackhawks win felt really big to me because of what they represented and their piss-poor ownership that sort of mirrors what's going on with our baseball team in Baltimore and sort of the resurrection of that. I thought the Blackhawks was really, really big, but I think Ovechkin and Washington and the heartache, and I mean the Capitals are the Cubs, right? They are the Bill Buckner, they are the Red Sox. They're that story for hockey. There is no other story now, right? There's no other Destiny Child of hockey. The Rangers were that a quarter of a century ago, but
right.
There's no venerable. The Toronto Maple Leafs will now take that on, right? They'll be the great hope that somehow, some way, they'll win a championship. They're the next cause, right?
Right. I think there's 2 teams in the NHL. You might even argue 3.
The
but
Flyers.
I'll go in order. I'll go in order. So when you look at someone like Ovechkin, who had all these near misses, now granted, it's Alex's team. He wears the C, but there are other players on there that fought tooth and nail their entire careers to get to this point. Braden Holtby is somebody who has been through a lot as far as playoff performances, regular season performances. Hell, the guy wasn't even the starting goaltender at the start of the playoffs for the Capitals, and he brings them in to Stanley Cup championship glory. Okay? But my thing is, I look at it two ways. When Lanny McDonald got his first cup with the Calgary Flames, and when Ray Bourque got his first cup with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, granted, Ovechkin is astronomically a Hall of Famer, no question about it, first ballot. And I know there's going to be some hockey purists. Oh, you can't compare him to Ray Bourque. But I'm not comparing them stat-wise. I'm not comparing them.
That would just be some guy at the end of a bar stool in Boston, is what that would be.
Exactly.
Yes.
But you look at what now Alex Ovechkin has done. He has now stepped into immortality. Very few players can reach immortality without winning a Stanley Cup or a championship. Dan Marino's one of those guys. That he's an immortal, he just doesn't have the hardware that goes around his finger.
Well, look at how long it took Elway, right? Look at how long it took Peyton Manning.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not Matt Ryan's still sort of trying to find that, and if that eludes him, he'll be the guy that blew the 3-touchdown lead. If Ovechkin would have done a facer in Game 7 against Tampa, it just would have been one more pie in the eye, right?
Exactly.
And that's all over with now. So when you see him drinking vodka and jumping in a fountain,
love it.
You know, I mean, that's baked into the cake, isn't it?
Absolutely love it. And let me tell you something. Every hockey fan around the world wishes that their captain was able to do that, because that means they won the championship. But getting back to the conversation, I think this was very emotional and it was a very emotional period for me, because I just love great hockey players. Whether it's Joe Thornton, whether it's Sidney Crosby, whether it's John Tavares, whether it's Taylor Hall, it doesn't matter who it is. Connor McDavid's in that group. Okay, when someone reaches that perfect moment, it's an emotional thing, because you know what? You knew how long he suffered. And I'm talking about Alex Ovechkin and the rest of the Capitals. Barry Trotz has been in this game a long time. So when you see that hardware given, and earned. It's a very emotional thing. Now, as far as the other teams that I think are next in line, anytime an Original Six team wins a Stanley Cup, it's kind of a special thing because it's just, wow, this team has been around so long, they're still doing it, and look, they just added another trophy to their case. But the 2 or 3 teams for me, and I'll throw a fourth one in there because I feel the Islanders and Edmonton Oilers are like even, that if the Edmonton Oilers or the Islanders were to win a cup again, it would almost be like, oh, here's the nostalgia. Let's all look at the years that Gretzky had and look at the Bossy years and Trottier. But the 3 teams for me, if the Toronto Maple Leafs win a Stanley Cup, if the St. Louis Blues win their first Stanley Cup, and if the Philadelphia Flyers win a Stanley Cup, I think you're going to see similar type of reactions as you've seen from the fans in the Washington area and the captains. Now, granted, I don't know if they'll do that in Toronto because they're a little bit more buttoned up and they're hockey town, not hockey town, but they just think that the hockey universe revolves in that area, which I don't disagree with. But I just feel that if Toronto wins the Cup, you'll see unbelievable celebrations, but I don't think
you'll see the ugly American from Scottsdale, doing belly whoppers off the CN Tower, right? That's probably what you'll see.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Dude, do you remember their mayor? I mean, when you consider who their mayor was and Rob Ford,
And I think his brother's their mayor now. Didn't he just win an election?
Dude, there's nothing that, the kid from the desert's going to do up there that's going to, be any better or any worse than that. But, hey, man, it was quite a run. And I just wanted to get you on to get your perspective. Literally, because I do think we're a little too close to the frying pan around here, and I think some of the media is too. The media that trailed this team around for 3 or 4 weeks. I'll say this, man. I've fallen in love with hockey again and hockey players, and it's my roots to covering hockey 30 years ago that goes back to all of this. Boy, there's such an integrity about hockey, right? And there's such an honesty at the lockers, and I know they're not maybe as interesting as football players, but they're more interesting to me because what you get after a game is usually not pure emotion. There's a lot of intellect that goes into it, but there's always some sort of honesty about hockey that I don't necessarily feel like I get in the other sports. Even the gamesmanship part of, the fighting at the end of Game 4, Trot says, that's old school. We know what that is. And everybody sort of identifies it for what it is. It's a no-nonsense sport, I would say. And maybe that goes back to Canadians being maybe much more no-nonsense people.
I agree with that statement. I definitely do. Everybody wants to respect the game, and everybody wants to carry the torch, and everybody sees how the players before them did it. So no one wants to come out and be a Sean Avery. No one wants to come out and be that loudmouth guy who puts himself ahead of the team.
Or a guy that licks other guys' faces in the case of Boston, right?
Of course, exactly, of course. Hey, listen, I like Marchie. I like Brad Marchand. I think he's a tough hockey player. Some of the extracurricular stuff, it's like, all right, dude, enough. But, there's a ton of other teams and fans out there that would kill to have number 63 in their lineup every night.
I wouldn't want him. I don't know, man.
Except for you.
Not for me. Give me Tom Wilson and an elbow in your ears. What? Hey,
right.
Man, I appreciate you making a little time and paying some respect to the Stanley Cup champions, Lou.
Of course, dude, listen, we know each other a long time, and I know at the beginning, during the intro, you mentioned all the things we've been through, but, we actually had a really cool moment at the Winter Garden. We were at Edward Moran's Bar and Grill. I want to say a couple of months before the unfortunate September 11th incident happened. But we had Amanda Kutzer, Robbie Ginepri, and you remember we had a young James Blake come and hang out while you did your show, al fresco, as you kept calling it, outside, sitting in front of Edward Moran's Bar and Grill. I mean, dude, we have so many things that we did together, separately.
Gimelstob came over, didn't he?
Yes, Justin Gimelstob came over too.
Gimelstob came by.
Yep, he definitely came by. And
you were there the day that Tony Bennett was in
yes.
Mickey Mantle's with us. You were the one that went and got Regis Philbin to sit in and sing the Notre Dame fight song with me, right?
I did. That was, it's so funny because you did that from the back of Mickey Mantle's restaurant. That was when you were doing 2 shows. You were doing the first hour of your show locally in Baltimore, and then you went nasty nationwide. And Regis was there having lunch. He came over, he sat down, did the interview for your Baltimore hour, and then we replayed it in the national hour, and it was so much fun that I can remember.
You remember that better than I do.
This is even funnier. Subway Series 2000, everybody's there. So it's you and a bunch of other Sporting News radio hosts, and Richard Grieco walks by. And I grab him from the street.
21 Jump Street.
Yeah. and from Booker. He was Booker on 21 Jump Street, then his own show. Well, he came in, and this was right around the time that Survivor was the big show, and I remember seeing Richard Hatch walk down Central Park South, and I went to get him to come on the show, and he says, "Oh, I would gladly do it, but you have to call my agent first." And I'm thinking, "You're Richard Hatch. You just won Survivor. You have an agent? Really? Just get in here and do the show." And he wouldn't come by. But we had so much fun with Slash, and when he had Slash's Snake Pit and his lead singer Rod, who I guess was with Lenny Kravitz's band at one point, and the Baja Men came by and sang "Who Let the Dogs Out." Jonathan Silverman came by, which was even funnier because I grew up watching TV shows that he was
Men
in.
came and did that song in the middle of Mickey Mantle's.
Yep.
Dude, I so don't remember that.
Yeah.
God, I should have you on the show just to remind me of things I've forgotten. You know,
Oh, dude, listen, there are so many things that we have been through together, and we could do 2, 3, 4 hours of just stuff that happened when either we were together or just, I mean, listen, you introduced me at a Giants preseason game against the Ravens at the old Giant Stadium to Coach Billick at the end. Coach Billick has never forgotten me since that point, and my father absolutely loves Brian Billick. So when I saw
I love
Coach
Brian Billick too, so don't tell him.
He's the best. He's the best, and I remember reading it in your book, Purple Rain, when you the first championship with Billick, and you figured out where Billick was staying in Baltimore, and you were able to nail him down for an interview and all. I mean, it was just like all these.
I have sources.
What?
I have sources.
You do, but I still, you know, I mean, the stories about John Stedman, I remember all the stories about him, how he helped you get into this business, and he used to call you senor, and all these great things. See, your words were not wasted on me when I was in my youth. You know what I mean?
That's why you're still doing this semi-successfully. So,
right, of course. But even at the CNNSI Awards at Madison Square Garden, it was me with Papa Joe Chevalier, our dearly departed friend who we miss terribly.
I put all those pictures up, by the way.
Yeah.
I had never told my wife that story, Lou. Like, she had seen the pictures of me in a tuxedo with, like...
Yeah. You were the only host in a tuxedo that night. Everybody else had, like, jacket and tie. You had full-on tuxedo, cummerbund, wacky-colored tie, wacky-colored cummerbund. I mean, it was. I remember the picture of you with Evander Holyfield, and Evander Holyfield has the fedora on sitting down, and Jerry Glanville was there. Young Tiger Woods was there. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And
I love when you brought Bobby Valentine in because he was my favorite player when I was a kid, and he knew that. I mean, we knew each other a little bit, so he would always lay it on thick for me. I got a lot of Zen of Bobby V. And Roger Clemens came by, but my favorite story from that night, and I told my wife this, and I think I've admitted this on the air before, but I'm going to admit it fully right now. That very late in that broadcast, Scotty P was with us, and he was chasing guests too, and he had a tuxedo on, and he came into the little cage, the glass studio, very late with Martina Navratilova.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's no chance in the world like that. That's who he's going to walk in with. Like, it could have been Dean Smith because we had him on. It could have been Jim Brown because we had him on. I had the day Sir Roger Bannister died was the day that I went and found all the pictures. Dan Mike Ruzioni was on with me. Dan Jansen, the speed skater.
Yep.
We also had Bonnie Blair. So anyway, Carl Lewis. I mean, not to forget, Carl Lewis.
Right.
But Martina was really late, and Scott brought her in and had a bottle of water, and she sat down and she put the headset on. And first things first, I always rooted against her. I always, hated on her as a kid because I rooted for Chris Everett Lloyd. She was a doubles partner of Pam Shriver, and Pam always told me how cool she was and how awesome she was. And I'm like, she's Martina Navratilova. She's not cool. She's cocky. She beat everybody's ass. She had muscles like a dude did, like all that stuff you would think when you were 10 years old. She walked in. She put the headset on. And she got next to me, and first off, she smelled really nice, and she was like one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. Like,
I believe the word is elegant.
She sat down, and I was like, I don't even know what, I have the interview, and I actually have digitized it. I'm going to run it one day, and it might actually have been good. I don't know. I haven't listened to it. This is 1999 that we did this. And I had a crush on Martina Navratilova. And she did, and she sat down, and the first thing she said to me, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you decided to do this. She's like, don't flatter yourself. Your friend came over and said, and said to me, will you do the show? And I said, I'll go anywhere you take me if you can get me cold water and get me left alone. And she said, and he decided to like put me on radio with you. So don't flatter yourself. You had cold water, and I sat down to drink water with you. And she went on to have this really pleasant 10 or 12-minute visit. We had fun, you know, as most of my guests usually did, as you remember. And she left. And I think you, me, Andy Mueller was with us too.
Sure, I remember him.
We admitted, all of us, that, like, we didn't like Martina, we rooted against Martina, and now all of us want to go on a date with Martina. Like, literally, we fell in love with Martina Navratilova. So that's my dying image of that night, and I told my wife this story a couple months ago, and she's like, I've never heard, she feels like she's heard all my crap, quite frankly, right? Like every story there is, because I got a lot of them. But she had never heard that one. So I don't know if you knew that I have a 20-year crush on Martina Navratilova.
I vaguely remember that story, and I'll give you one of mine because I've never done this before, and I've never done it since. One thing, when you have a credential, you know you're not allowed to ask for autographs. It says it right on the back of a credential, no autographs. There was an opportunity to see Derek Jeter up close. They gave away a Sports Illustrated,
magazine. I remember.
Magazine that was, right. So Derek Jeter signs my magazine because I'm thinking, it's Derek Jeter. When am I going to get this opportunity again? And then I have Wayne Gretzky's signature in that magazine to this day. So I have Derek Jeter on the cover and Wayne Gretzky inside the magazine. And I've been reluctant to ever put it on eBay to sell it because, one, I don't have certificate of authenticity. Phones weren't what they are now where, could you imagine?
It's yours to have and hold, dude. I mean, Ali was there that night.
I'm sorry?
Ali was there that night.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, the pictures, I tried to tell my wife about it, and I tried to, like, Google the pictures, and I could only find, like, a few Getty images from that night. Like, Jason Sehorn was there that night with Angie Harmon.
Oh,
so I could find some of the celebrities around it, but it was an extraordinary night, dude. And I love telling these kind of crazy stories because I haven't told them in 20 years. You know?
Right, and one of my favorite moments of that night, there's two moments that stick out to me that I will never, ever forget. It just so happened that I did an event with Jerry Glanville when they still had the Inside the NFL on HBO. So it was Glanville, Buonacani, Dawson, Collinsworth. We did an event at Mickey Mantle's restaurant. So I was pretty much with Jerry Glanville the entire night. So I see Jerry, and he's got a huge belt buckle on, like he won some sort of rodeo. He looked like a heavyweight champion. So
I'm sure he got it from Elvis, no doubt.
Right, of course. So I walk up to him, I tap him on the shoulder. He doesn't know I'm there, so I tap him on the shoulder, and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Glanville." He turns around and goes, "Oh, my God, Lou, what's going on? How you doing?" He gives me a huge hug, and I say, "I just have to ask you, who did you have to beat to get that championship belt?" And he just punched me in the arm. He goes, "You smart ass. That's great. I love you. How you been, darling? What's going on?" So we're talking, and all of a sudden we see this figure down at the other end of the hallway, and Jerry starts screaming, "Tiger! Tiger! Come here, Tiger!" Now I'm standing next to Jerry Glanville. He's screaming at Tiger Woods, so Tiger Woods comes walking down the hallway. "Jerry, what's going on, man?" He goes, "Listen, baby, I just wanted to tell you, I don't even like golf, but I watch it and play it because I love you." And he's like, "Oh, Jerry, that's..." And I'm standing there going, it's. I don't get starstruck, but in my head I'm going, it's Tiger Woods.
That's a young Tiger Woods.
Yeah, a young Tiger.
He was the biggest star in the world that night. I mean, literally.
Right. And then moments after that, everybody leaves. Jerry goes to his seats. He's like, "I'll catch up with you later," which we did, and we had a couple of cocktails and had a really nice time. Then there's three figures walking towards me. Dean Smith, Scotty Bowman, and Red Auerbach. And I'm thinking to myself, holy Christmas, this is going to be amazing. They stop. "Hello, young man, how are you?" And I'm like, "Hi, how are you doing?" "Okay, so what do we have to do?" They were coming on Papa Joe's show. They all sat down together, the three of them with Papa Joe, and it was, "Okay, thank you so much, young man." Blah, blah, blah. And you're sitting there and your mind's blown because you're thinking, how many you're trying to add up in your head, how many wins and championships do all these three men have together? And
when people ask me, like, the greatest, they see my Super Bowl weeks and all that stuff, I'm like, man, boy, that Sports Illustrated night. I mean, by the way, Scotty Bowman did sit down and do radio with me that night. So did Dean Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that we'll ever. I didn't get Ali, obviously. I didn't get Jabbar, but I did get Martina Navratilova. So
it was a great night. Listen, even if you sat there and just commented on the people walking by, like we did at Mickey Mantle's all those years and all those times, we're just sitting in the
there's
window.
Tony Bennett. He's not going to do the show, but it's nice to have him with us tonight. Hello, Tony. Mr.
Exactly.
Bennett.
Yeah, we Isaiah Thomas walked by once when he was I think with the CBA at one point. I mean, it was a fun time to be a sports producer. It was an even better time to be a sports host, but it was just fun. Those days, whatever was bothering you, whether it was something with your wife or girlfriend at the time or this or that, when you got on the air and you sat in that seat with the headphones on, it was like everything went away, and it was, even working with Scott Farrell, even working with Farrell at Sirius, we used to say that from 8 o'clock at night to midnight, no one can touch us. And as soon as we put those headphones on and popped those mics on, it was go time. And whatever happened earlier, whatever arguments, whatever headbutting we had, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want this guest. I want this guest. I can't get this guy on. It all went away, and it was, all right, now it's go time, and you just tunnel vision, and you powered through for those 4 hours, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing just doing it, working with you, working with Joe, Rick Ballou, everybody at Sporting News, and to the other people that I've moved on in my career to work with. I mean, it's just so much fun that we get paid to do this and reminisce and react. It's amazing.
Martina Navratilova stories in the Stanley Cup. Lou Pelligrino was my producer at Sporting News Radio 2 decades ago in New York. He's still in New York with Dan Patrick and the Danettes and running around producing Richard Deitch and a bunch of other podcasts. You can follow him, Lou_Pellegrino. He's on because he's my friend and he's one of the biggest hockey fans that I know. And I don't know where you were when that picture of me in the Skipjacks uni popped up with the Stanley Cup, but I did that for guys like you.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Take care, man. Be well.
All right, Nestor. Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. Back to back, as TJ Oshie says. The BuyAToyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. By downloading the TuneIn Radio app, we do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Also includes our Maryland Jockey Club entries for Laurel this weekend, also on the front of WNST.net. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We stream live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. So much going on around here. So many people to talk to about Stanley Cup championships and golf and baseball and Triple Crowns and soccer and the World Cup. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Dallas in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.